The Galactic Council chamber was, in a word, ridiculous. Picture the most pretentious courthouse you've ever seen, multiply it by 1,000, then stick it in space and fill it with aliens who took themselves way too seriously. The architecture screamed, "We're important," in 17 different languages, including several that consisted entirely of interpretive dance. Ambassador Flixnorp adjusted his ceremonial sash for the 14th time that morning. As a Glorbian, he resembled what would happen if a slug went to law school and developed an unhealthy obsession with parliamentary procedure. His three eye stalks swiveled independently as he reviewed the day's agenda on his bioluminescent tablet. First Contact Protocol 74-B, he announced to the chamber, his voice carrying that special tone reserved for DMV employees and middle management everywhere. Species designation, human, planet designation, Earth. Threat level. He paused dramatically, because Flixnorp loved his dramatic pauses almost as much as he loved bureaucracy. Negligible. Commander Vex perched on his elevated platform, like a feathered gargoyle with anger issues, ruffled his metallic plumage dismissively. The Crixian military philosophy could be summed up as if it moves, intimidate it, and if it doesn't move, intimidate it harder just to be safe. Another primitive species thinking they're ready for the big leagues, Vex squawked, his voice like gravel in a blender. What is it this time? Nuclear fission, combustion engines, please tell me they've at least figured out fire. Counselor Membrane, the ancient Zephyrian whose translucent body pulsed with what passed for wisdom among jellyfish-adjacent species, floated serenely in her containment sphere. She'd been doing this first contact dance for 3,000 years, and the routine had become as predictable as a sitcom rerun. The young species always believe they are special, she intoned in that mystical way that made everything sound like a fortune cookie written by someone with a philosophy degree. They learn, or they become cautionary tales. The galaxy has room for both. The chamber itself was designed for maximum intimidation factor. Holographic displays showed the known galaxy with little red dots marking civilizations that had declined to join the council. The implication was clear: comply or become a red dot. It was psychological warfare disguised as interior decorating. Flixnorp cleared his throat, which in Glorbian physiology sounded like someone gargling with gravel. The humans have achieved basic spaceflight and have been broadcasting their existence across several frequencies for approximately 100 of their solar cycles. Standard procedure applies. The standard procedure was beautifully simple in its brutality. Invite the new species to a diplomatic meeting. Show them exactly how outclassed they were. Present them with a choice: submit to Galactic Council authority, or face the consequences. Watch them grovel. File the paperwork. Move on to the next species. It had worked flawlessly for millennia. Every species followed the same predictable pattern: initial bravado, growing fear, desperate negotiation, and finally, grateful submission to their new galactic overlords. The council had turned intimidation into an art form. When do we expect their representative? Vex asked, already mentally composing the threats he'd deliver. He had a whole speech prepared about orbital bombardment that usually made new species wet themselves. Any moment now, Flixnorp replied, checking his chronometer. Species file indicates they've selected a single representative. One Jake Martinez, classification unremarkable human male. The three council members settled into their positions, like actors taking their marks. Another day, another terrified primitive species to add to their collection. After all, what could possibly go wrong? The chamber's massive doors opened with a sound designed to inspire awe and terror. Most species representatives stumbled through those doors looking like they'd just seen their own funeral arrangements. They came bearing gifts or weapons they thought were impressive, or sometimes both while crying. Jake Martinez walked in like he was entering a slightly disappointing coffee shop. He was medium height, medium build, with the kind of face that wouldn't stand out in a crowd of three. His most remarkable feature was his complete lack of remarkable features. He wore a simple dark suit that looked like it came from a department store, carried a small briefcase, and had the expression of someone who'd rather be literally anywhere else. The aliens had prepared for screaming, they'd prepared for fainting. They'd prepared for the traditional "Oh mighty ones we bring tribute" routine that usually kicked off these meetings. What they hadn't prepared for was Jake pulling out his phone and checking his messages. "Sorry," he said, not looking up from the screen. "My daughter's soccer game got moved to Thursday. Coach says the field's too muddy." He finally glanced around the chamber with all the enthusiasm of someone evaluating a hotel lobby. "Nice place, very shiny." Commander Vex's feathers ruffled in confusion. Where was the terror? The desperate attempt to appear worthy? The ritualistic offering of their species' most precious artifacts? Ambassador Flixnorp's eye stalks swiveled toward each other in what passed for a frown among Glorbians. This wasn't following protocol at all. He cleared his throat again, louder this time. Jake looked up from his phone with the patient expression of someone waiting for a dentist appointment. Oh, are we starting? Great. I've got a conference call at 3, so if we could keep this moving, that'd be fantastic. The silence that followed was the kind of silence that happens when someone walks into the wrong movie theater and sits down anyway. It was awkward, uncomfortable, and getting worse by the second. Counselor Membrane's translucent form pulsed with what might have been confusion, or possibly indigestion. In 3,000 years of first contact protocols, she'd never encountered a species representative who looked bored. Jake yawned, actually yawned. Then he pulled out a small notebook and a pen that looked like it came from a bank lobby. So, I'm guessing you're the folks who sent that invitation. Nice hologram, by the way. Very intimidating. My neighbor Gary would love the tech specs on that projector. The 3 council members exchanged glances. This was either the most elaborate psychological warfare they'd ever encountered, or humanity had sent them someone who was genuinely spectacularly unimpressed with the entire galactic community. Somehow, the second option was infinitely more terrifying. Ambassador Flixnorp decided to salvage the situation by sticking to the script. The script had never failed them before. The script was law, order, and the foundation of galactic civilization. The script would work because the script always worked. Human representative, he began, his voice carrying the full weight of bureaucratic authority. You stand before the Galactic Council, governing body of 473 star systems, commander of fleets that span the known galaxy, arbiters of life and death for countless species. Jake nodded politely, and jotted something in his notebook. It looked suspiciously like he was making a grocery list. Flixnorp pressed on, his confidence growing. You are here because your species has reached what you consider to be technological maturity. You believe you are ready to join the galactic community. Actually, Jake said, not looking up from his writing. I'm here because you guys kept sending those messages to our radio telescopes. Something about mandatory compliance. My boss figured we should at least hear you out before filing a noise complaint. Commander Vex's talons scraped against his perch. This was his cue. Time to bring out the big guns, metaphorically speaking. Well, also literally speaking, since he had several big guns hidden throughout the chamber. Your weapons are primitive, Vex declared, his voice echoing dramatically through the chamber. Your fastest ships move at a crawl. Your understanding of physics is laughably incomplete. We have vessels that can crack planets like eggs. We have weapons that can sterilize star systems. We have technology that makes your greatest achievements look like cave paintings. Jake glanced up with mild interest. That's cool. What kind of fuel efficiency do you get on those planet crackers? Because if you're using standard antimatter conversion, the energy requirements must be pretty rough on your logistics chain. Vex blinked. That wasn't the usual response. Usually there was screaming by now. Counselor Membrane decided to deploy the wisdom angle. Her voice took on that mystic quality that had intimidated species for millennia. Young species often believe they understand the universe. The Kethrani believed this. They developed fusion weapons, and thought themselves mighty. Their homeworld is now an asteroid belt. The Pixorians mastered faster-than-light travel, and considered themselves untouchable. We use their former colonies as mining operations. Jake made another note. Kethrani and Pixorians, got it. What happened to their populations? Relocation, or... He trailed off with the tone of someone asking about office relocation policies. The 3 council members were starting to feel like actors who'd forgotten their lines. This wasn't intimidation. This was customer service. Flixnorp decided to bring out the visual aids. The chamber's walls lit up with holographic displays showing massive fleets of council warships. Planets being reduced to cosmic dust, entire star systems being harvested for resources. The footage was real, devastating, and had never failed to reduce a species representative to a quivering mess. Jake watched with the attention of someone reviewing quarterly reports. Nice production values, he commented. Those explosions look pretty realistic. Is that practical effects or CGI? Hard to tell with the holographic projection. Those are not special effects. Vex screeched, his composure finally cracking. Those are records of actual destruction. We have eliminated entire civilizations. Oh, Jake said, making another note. Well, that seems inefficient. Dead civilizations don't pay taxes or contribute to economic growth. Plus there's got to be a ton of paperwork involved in genocide. The environmental cleanup alone must be a nightmare. The silence that followed was the sound of 3 galactic overlords, realizing they were having a conversation with someone who treated interstellar warfare like a budget meeting. Counselor Membrane tried one last time. Perhaps you do not understand the gravity of your situation, human. Your species stands at a crossroads. Submit to council authority, contribute to our empire, and prosper under our guidance. Refuse. She let the threat hang in the air like a storm cloud. Jake looked up from his notebook with the expression of someone who'd just been offered an extended car warranty. Or what? The question hung in the air like a challenge written in neon lights. Ambassador Flixnorp's eye stalks quivered with indignation. Commander Vex's feathers stood on end. Counselor Membrane's translucent form pulsed with barely contained fury. Or what? Flixnorp sputtered. Or we demonstrate why 473 star systems bow to our authority. Or we show you the same fate that befell every species foolish enough to defy us. Or Vex added with vicious satisfaction. We reduce your pathetic little planet to cosmic debris and sell the mineral rights to the highest bidder. Membrane's voice carried the weight of ancient wisdom and fresh threats. Your species will learn human, as all species learn. Through submission or through extinction. Jake nodded thoughtfully, like someone considering whether to upgrade their cable package. He closed his notebook with a soft snap that somehow sounded louder than all their threats combined. Then he stood up, adjusted his tie, and spoke for the first time with something other than polite boredom. Well, that's interesting, he said, his tone still conversational but carrying an edge that made the temperature in the chamber drop several degrees. See, I was expecting something like this, so I did a little homework on your operation here. Nice setup you've got. Very efficient. Very predictable. He gestured casually at the holographic displays still showing their military might. 473 star systems, right? That's impressive. Must take a lot of coordination to manage an empire that size. Probably requires some pretty sophisticated logistics networks. Supply chains, communication arrays, administrative hubs. The three council members exchanged uncertain glances. This wasn't groveling, but it wasn't defiance either. It was something much worse. Analysis. The thing is, Jake continued, pulling out his phone and scrolling through what looked like notes, humans have this weird habit of paying attention to details. Like how your communication network relies on quantum entanglement beacons positioned at specific gravitational stability points. Or how your supply ships follow predictable routes between resource worlds and manufacturing centers. Commander Vex's talons scraped nervously against his perch. What are you implying, human? Jake smiled. It was the kind of smile that retail managers wore when explaining why a customer couldn't return an obviously stolen item. Oh, I'm not implying anything. I'm just mentioning that my daughter's soccer league raised enough money last year to launch 3 satellites. Community fundraising is pretty impressive these days. He paused to check another message on his phone. Sorry, my wife wants to know if I'll be home for dinner. Anyway, where was I? Oh right, your impressive military technology. Jake gestured at the holographic fleet displays with the enthusiasm of someone pointing out interesting cloud formations. Those planet-cracking ships are fascinating. Focused gravitational manipulation, right. Must require enormous amounts of energy and some pretty specific positioning to work effectively. Probably takes hours to charge up for a single shot. Your point, human. Membrane demanded, her mystic composure beginning to crack. Well, Jake said, checking his watch. It's just that humans have this other weird habit. We like to test things. You know how some people can't walk past a wet paint sign without touching it? We're kind of like that, but with physics. He pulled out what looked like a standard tablet and tapped the screen a few times. So when we detected your ships entering our solar system last month, we got curious. Started running some experiments. Nothing dramatic, just poking around with a few concepts we'd been working on. The tablet beeped softly. Jake glanced at it and nodded. Oh good. The test results came back. Turns out quantum entanglement networks are really sensitive to gravitational fluctuations. Who knew? Ambassador Flixnorp's voice came out as barely a whisper. What did you do? Jake's smile widened, and for the first time since entering the chamber, he looked genuinely pleased. We moved Jupiter. Just a little bit. Maybe 3,000 kilometers. Took about 6 hours and a project budget that would make NASA weep with envy. The silence that followed was the sound of an entire galactic empire realizing it had just threatened the equivalent of a sleeping dragon. The really interesting part, Jake continued, checking his phone again, is that moving Jupiter apparently created some fascinating ripple effects in local space-time. My daughter's science fair project on gravitational lensing detected some unusual disruptions in what looked like artificial quantum entanglement networks. Teenage curiosity is amazing, isn't it? He stood up and tucked his tablet back into his briefcase with the satisfied air of someone who'd just finished a particularly successful presentation. Anyway, I should head home. Like I said, conference call at 3, and my wife is making pot roast tonight. Jake paused at the chamber doors and turned back with an afterthought. Oh, and gentlemen, next time you want to have a chat with humanity, maybe try sending a polite email first. We're actually pretty reasonable people when you don't lead with death threats. The doors closed behind him with a soft whisper, leaving 3 galactic overlords staring at the empty space where the most terrifying human in the universe had just delivered the most polite threat in galactic history. For exactly 37 seconds, nobody moved. The chamber remained frozen in a tableau of existential horror, like a museum exhibit titled "The Moment Everything Went Wrong." Then Commander Vex began hyperventilating. They moved a gas giant. He wheezed, his metallic feathers molting from stress. They moved an entire planet. For 6 hours. With pocket change. Ambassador Flixnorp's 3 eye stalks were rotating independently. A sure sign of impending nervous breakdown among Glorbians. Emergency session, he whispered. Emergency session. Code Red Omega. No, Code Black. Do we have a Code Black? We need a Code Black. Counselor Membrane's translucent form was flickering like a broken hologram. 3,000 years of accumulated wisdom had just been drop-kicked into irrelevance by a man worried about pot roast. Within minutes, the chamber was chaos. Emergency klaxons wailed as the council's most senior members materialized via quantum teleportation, many of them still in their sleeping robes or halfway through meals that would never be finished. High Admiral Grex, Supreme Commander of the Council's military forces, arrived first. He was a Thaxonian, which meant he looked like someone had crossed a rhinoceros with a filing cabinet, and given the result anger management issues. What's the emergency? Are we under attack? Do I need to mobilize the fleet? Worse. Vex croaked. Much worse. The humans, they moved Jupiter. They what now? Moved Jupiter. 3,000 kilometers. In 6 hours. As a test. Grex's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, like a malfunctioning traffic light. That's impossible. The energy requirements alone would need. He stopped talking as the math caught up with his brain. Dr. Quinzel, the council's chief science advisor, was next to arrive. She was a Neraxian, resembling a praying mantis that had discovered caffeine and higher education. Her compound eyes were already analyzing holographic data streams as she materialized. Preliminary scans confirm gravitational anomalies in the Sol system, she announced without preamble. The gas giant designated Jupiter has indeed been displaced from its original orbit. The precision required for such a maneuver without destabilizing the entire system is. She paused, her mandibles clicking nervously. Theoretically impossible with any known technology. But they did it. Membrane whispered. With a children's fundraiser budget. The next few hours became a blur of increasingly frantic research. Every available council scientist, military strategist, and intelligence analyst was pulled into emergency sessions. The results were not encouraging. Sir, reported Intelligence Chief Blackson, a shadowy being who preferred to communicate through ominous whispers. We've been monitoring human communications for the past 6 months. We may have misinterpreted some things. Explain, Flixnorp demanded, though he wasn't sure he wanted to hear the answer. What we classified as primitive entertainment broadcasts. They appear to be historical documentaries. The humans have been casually manipulating space-time for recreational purposes for decades. Something called particle accelerators that they build underground for fun. They split atoms to generate electricity. They've been to their moon multiple times using what they consider outdated technology. Admiral Grex was studying tactical displays with growing horror. Their primitive nuclear weapons aren't primitive. They're just old. Their current capabilities include something called antimatter research that they conduct at universities. They're teaching planet-killing physics to teenagers. Dr. Quinzel's mandibles were clicking rapidly, the Neraxian equivalent of a panic attack. I've been analyzing their scientific publications. They've been publishing papers on dimensional manipulation, quantum tunneling, and something called zero-point energy extraction, in what they call peer-reviewed journals. They're sharing universe-breaking knowledge like recipe exchanges. There's more, Blackson whispered ominously. The human representative, Jake Martinez. He's not a military leader or head of state. He's a mid-level bureaucrat from something called the Department of Interplanetary Affairs. His official title is Assistant Deputy Coordinator of First Contact Protocols. He has a mortgage and drives a Honda Civic. The silence that followed was the sound of an entire galactic empire, realizing they'd been casually dismissed by middle management. If that's their junior diplomat, Admiral Grex said slowly, what do their actual leaders look like? Intelligence Chief Blackson's response came as barely a whisper. Sir, we don't know, and after today's meeting, I'm not sure we want to find out. Ambassador Flixnorp was scrolling through human communication intercepts on his tablet, each new discovery adding another layer to his growing hysteria. They have something called Florida Man, who appears to be an unstoppable force of chaos. They've domesticated wolves, and turned them into pets. They drink poison for fun and call it alcohol. They voluntarily jump out of perfectly good aircraft for recreation. Sir, one of the junior analysts interrupted nervously. We're receiving a transmission from Earth. Every being in the chamber froze. Put it through. Flixnorp croaked. Jake Martinez's face appeared on the main display, looking exactly as calm and unimpressed as he had 3 hours earlier. Hey there, Jake Martinez again. Just wanted to follow up on our meeting today. Hope I didn't leave you with the wrong impression about humanity. The assembled galactic leaders held their collective breath. We're really not looking for any trouble, Jake continued with the tone of someone leaving a friendly voicemail. We've got our own problems to deal with. Climate change, taxes, trying to figure out why kids these days spend so much time staring at their phones. You know how it is. He paused to check something off screen. Anyway, my daughter's science fair is next week, and she's really excited about her project on gravitational wave detection. Kids, right, always reaching for the stars. The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in absolute silence. Gravitational wave detection, Dr. Quinzel whispered. Their children are building gravitational wave detectors for school projects. High Admiral Grex was staring at the blank screen with the expression of someone who'd just watched their entire career become obsolete. We need to rethink our entire approach to this species. Sir, came another nervous voice from the back of the chamber. There's been another development. We've been monitoring Earth's internet, and there's something called Reddits where humans are discussing today's meeting. What are they saying? Flixnorp asked, though he was terrified of the answer. They're making jokes about it, sir. Something about alien bureaucrats and intergalactic Karens. The consensus seems to be that our threats were adorable, and that we should try harder next time. The assembled council members looked at each other with the dawning realization that they had just become the galactic equivalent of that neighbor who complains about lawn maintenance to people who casually terraform planets for fun. And somewhere in the back of everyone's mind was the same terrifying thought. If this was how humans responded to threats, what would they do if someone actually made them angry? 6 months later, the Galactic Council chamber looked like the headquarters of a support group for recovering megalomaniacs. The once pristine halls were now littered with empty stimulant containers, stress relief devices, and an alarming number of security monitors dedicated exclusively to watching Earth. Ambassador Flixnorp had developed a nervous tic where his eye stalks twitched every time someone mentioned the word human. His ceremonial sash hung crooked. His bioluminescent tablet was cracked from being dropped during panic attacks, and he'd started a new filing system dedicated entirely to human incident reports. Daily briefing, he announced to the half-empty chamber, his voice carrying the exhausted tone of someone who'd been drinking coffee for 6 months straight. Earth status report, still terrifying. Commander Vex, who'd molted so much from stress that he looked like a partially plucked chicken, shuffled through his intelligence reports with trembling talons. The humans have been quiet, sir. Suspiciously quiet. Define quiet, Counselor Membrane whispered. Her translucent form had developed a permanent nervous shimmer, like a jellyfish having an anxiety attack. Well, Vex began, consulting his notes with the careful attention of someone defusing a bomb. They launched something called the James Webb Space Telescope last week. Early reports suggest it can see through time. Not metaphorically. Literally through time. Flixnorp's eye stalks drooped. Of course it can. There's more, Vex continued reluctantly. Intelligence indicates they've solved something called fusion power and are treating it like a routine engineering problem. They're planning to use it for something called charging electric cars. They're using stellar nucleosynthesis for personal transportation, Dr. Quinzel translated from her corner, where she'd been obsessively analyzing human scientific publications for months. Because apparently that's just Tuesday for them. High Admiral Grex entered the chamber looking like he'd aged a decade in 6 months. His once pristine military uniform was rumpled. His 4 eyes were bloodshot, and he carried a cup of what smelled like military-grade stimulants. Status report from the fleet, he announced without preamble. Morale is at an all-time low. Half the crews are requesting transfers to the Outer Rim territories. The other half are asking if we have any diplomatic positions available. Why? Flixnorp asked, though he suspected he didn't want to know. Because yesterday the humans sent us a fruit basket. The silence that followed was the sound of collective psychological trauma being processed in real time. A fruit basket, Grex continued, his voice hollow, with a note that said thanks for the interesting chat. Hope we can be friends. It was signed by Jake Martinez's daughter. She included a drawing of our ships with smiley faces. Counselor Membrane's form flickered with what might have been a nervous breakdown. They're being nice to us. Why are they being nice to us? What do they want? Intelligence Chief Blackson materialized from the shadows, looking like he'd been surviving on paranoia and energy drinks. Sir, we've been monitoring human communications for any signs of military buildup or aggressive intentions toward the Council. And? Flixnorp prompted. They've forgotten about us, sir. The assembled council members stared at him in disbelief. Forgotten? Vex squawked. Yes, sir. Analysis of their internet communications shows that our meeting has been relegated to what they call meme status. There are jokes certainly, but mostly they've moved on to discussing something called cryptocurrencies, and arguing about whether a hot dog is a sandwich. They casually demonstrated the ability to relocate gas giants, Admiral Grex said slowly, and then they just moved on. It appears so, sir. Mr. Martinez returned to his regular duties at the Department of Interplanetary Affairs. His biggest concern this week appears to be organizing the office Christmas party. Dr. Quinzel looked up from her research tablet with wide, compound eyes. I've been analyzing their scientific progress since our meeting. They've made 17 breakthrough discoveries that should have taken centuries. Yesterday, a human university student apparently solved faster-than-light communication as a doctoral thesis. She's 23 years old and lists her hobbies as knitting and quantum mechanics. What's her dissertation committee's response? Flixnorp asked weakly. They gave her an A-, points deducted for formatting errors. The chamber fell into the kind of silence usually reserved for funeral homes and tax audits. Sir, came a nervous voice from one of the junior analysts. We have incoming communication from Earth. Every being in the chamber tensed. Flixnorp's eye stalks retracted partially into his head. Put it through, he whispered. Jake Martinez appeared on the main screen, looking exactly as calm and unremarkable as ever. He was sitting in what appeared to be a suburban kitchen, with cheerful yellow wallpaper and a coffee mug that read "World's Okayest Dad." Hey everyone, he said with a friendly wave. Jake Martinez here, hope you're all doing well. Just wanted to give you a quick heads up about something. The entire council held its collective breath. My daughter won her science fair with that gravitational wave detector project I mentioned. She's pretty excited about it. Anyway, her next project is about alternate dimensional theory, and she might be doing some small-scale experiments with parallel universe detection. Jake paused to take a sip of coffee. Nothing dramatic, just high school level stuff. But I figured I should mention it in case you guys detect any weird readings. Don't want you to think we're up to anything serious. He checked his watch with the casual air of someone running late for a dentist appointment. Oh, and my wife wanted me to thank you for the nice response to our fruit basket. She's thinking about sending cookies next time. Hope that's okay. The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in absolute silence. Parallel universe detection, Dr. Quinzel whispered. High school level parallel universe detection. His wife wants to send cookies, Vex added in a strangled voice. Ambassador Flixnorp slowly lowered his head until it rested on the council table. When he spoke, his voice was muffled but perfectly clear. I want to retire. I want to retire to a nice quiet planet somewhere in the outer rim where the most advanced technology is fire, and the biggest threat is weather. I want to grow vegetables and forget that humans exist. Sir, came another nervous voice. There's been another development. Flixnorp didn't lift his head. What now? Earth has established what they're calling an intergalactic relations department. They're offering to help other species with their technological development. Free of charge. They say it's about fostering friendly cosmic relationships. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of Flixnorp quietly sobbing into his ceremonial sash. Sir? The analyst continued tentatively. They've also invited us to something called a barbecue. Apparently it's a human social gathering involving grilled food and casual conversation. Mr. Martinez says to bring the whole family. And in that moment every member of the Galactic Council realized the same terrifying truth: they hadn't just encountered a superior species. They'd encountered the galactic equivalent of that neighbor who could probably level your house with their garage workshop tools, but instead invites you over for dinner and asks about your kids. The humans weren't conquerors, they weren't overlords. They were something far more terrifying than any military force the galaxy had ever seen. They were genuinely nice people who could accidentally destroy star systems while trying to help. And somewhere in a suburban kitchen on Earth, Jake Martinez was explaining to his wife why they needed to buy more coffee cups, because apparently they'd made some new friends who might be stopping by for that barbecue. The galaxy would never be the same.